Hello everyone, this is day 3 of Miss Quids trying out a Raspberry Pi 4 as a replacement to a desktop computer. This time we are trying out Manjaro Linux, specifically the KDE version of Manjaro, and this is the Raspberry Pi 4 build. So it's more directed at the ARM devices. Being Arch Linux, this is a rolling release and on the bleeding edge, so we get a lovely new release of the KDE desktop, newer than I have in Kubuntu 2004. Of course. So yeah, it's the KDE Desktop 5.19.2. And I think you liked the look of this first off, didn't you? It's a lot fancier than Raspberry Pi OS with the Pixel desktop.
Yeah, so I certainly think that this definitely wins a lot of style points. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and also even when it was just starting up, I thought this is a really fancy looking desktop. So yeah, positive points, it's pretty.
Yeah. The next positive was the audio was a lot easier.
Had to do was click, and I mean it was set to analog output by default. I just clicked headphones and then the audio just worked.
Yeah, so this is to output the audio to the speakers rather than HDMI cable, because Miss Quids has a separate speaker system. We don't have speakers in the monitor. But the downside now, and there's a reason why we have the desktop CPU usage on here, because this is cripplingly slow. I don't know what it is, whether it's the CPU or the micro SD card, but looking at it, it doesn't seem to be the micro SD card speed on the hard drive activity. And I will point out this is a class 10 micro SD card. Not the fastest I've got, but I didn't think it would be that bad. Yeah, trying to do two things, wasn't it? Very slow, the updates.
Yes, so because as Quid said, this is on the bleeding edge. Unsurprisingly, when I first booted it up, I had hundreds of updates that needed installing, and that took about half an hour to do. And while they were running, I should say I couldn't really do anything else.
That was bad. It didn't take half an hour to write the micro SD card originally for my main system. I think it was done in 10 minutes, if that. I don't really remember. But yeah, it was a significantly longer time to do the updates than it was to write the original image file. And now I know that is, of course, difference with sequential read and writes versus random read and writes, which would be more likely on an update. So we did get a shot from the webcam. Hello, this is a still image from it. I don't know what's going on here. The quality looked really bad, but the frame rate just with the webcam alone was, well, it wasn't even 1 frame a second. It was below that. And it was all weird and coloured. I'm not sure what's going on there, but the still image size is very large. Now, we had a bit of a problem trying to choose a webcam viewer. So the default pre-installed one was the Quids Video for Linux test utility and capture utility. That just crashed when we opened it, so we tried Quidsup instead, which, yeah, we got this still. I wanted to try GVC view, but that's not available in the, well, apparently it's not compiled for ARM in the Arch repository. It was though in Debian, so we know an ARM version of it exists. The Quidsup doesn't have any control over the size of the resolution from the camera, so whether it's trying to maximise it and go for, I think this is my old Logitech C910 camera, which you would have seen over the last few years. So whether it's trying to do HD and being crippled by the bandwidth there, I don't know, but yeah, I had no control over it, so we were unable to use it again.
So in terms of the applications that come pre-installed, we have fewer under development, which is kind of makes a bit more sense, because unlike Raspberry OS, this isn't perhaps the operating system you go to if you're using this for educational purposes. Although that said, there is an education section which has LibreOffice Math as mathematics and science.
Repeated there, that's
yep.
Not good.
Games, we didn't actually have any games installed, so I actually installed K-Breakout myself because I wanted to have some games to have a play around with and see how that looked. In terms of graphics, we have another LibreOffice program along with a couple of other options. GwenView we just saw when we opened the webcam still. For internet we have Firefox as the web browser, For multimedia, we've already kind of covered that, what we already have pre-installed and whatnot. For Office, again, we have LibreOffice. Ocular also appears here. Settings and System, and then it's just, you know, kind of what you'd expect for the other sections. Kind of a different selection to what we saw with Raspberry OS. One thing that I find pretty cool is that whenever you open any application, where you would have had the old hourglass in older versions, quite older versions of Windows, you get the little icon of whatever the program is bouncing along. So it took opening a couple of different ones to realise that that was what it was, but I find that quite cool.
Do you know that's actually not the default now on some releases of KDE? It always used to be, but Kubuntu and KDE Neon, I don't think it was the default anymore, which is a shame. And KDE developers, if you're listening, we still like that bouncy cursor. It's fancy.
Yeah.
Installing applications was very simple. We didn't have to go digging around with Pacman, which I kind of expect Miss Quids to know straight away. The different package managers in Linux. Coming from Windows, you're not going to know that, but you're able to install programs through the this add remove software. I'm not sure what this is, but yeah, it was simple enough.
Yep, so you just click whichever one you want and remember to click apply at the bottom. So when you try to install a program, we actually found that sometimes it came up with a box of optional dependencies, and it took a couple of go-arounds to realise that that yes, they are optional and you're not expected to tick everything before you click next. So that actually stopped us from initially installing something because we thought it can't get the optional dependencies, and then rethinking, they're actually optional. So if that doesn't work but the thing still installs, then it'll work, and that's fine.
The performance and speed of opening applications has been a lot slower in Manjaro KDE. And what we've noticed, if you try doing a couple of things at once, so if it's getting a bit slow at like opening an application or doing something in an application, and you try doing something as simple as opening the application launcher in KDE, then it can just be unresponsive and it can take quite a few seconds before the launcher appears. Now, for something that basic, you'd think it would already be loaded into memory. So yeah, it's been a bit of a disappointment there. I think we have to say that, yes, it is very pretty, but as day-to-day usage, no, I would think this would be intolerable after a while. I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has experienced the same thing, because I would expect Arch to perform so much better, and KDE is a lot more lightweight now than it used to be years ago. I would hate to think that we're just the only users experiencing this.
In terms of starting using particular things and having the settings, there's definitely an advantage over Raspberry OS particularly in setting up the audio and making sure that was all working.
So that was day 3. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you all later.